Afternoon everyone, welcome back. It is so nice to be out in something approaching spring-like weather. It was freezing on that last vlog I did at home fell. The thermal's on, the hat, and even though it looked nice and warm on the camera, I think it was about -2 or something like that, which is absolutely crazy for this time of year. But anyway, enough weather waffle. I'm out shooting the bluebells because it's springtime and that's what we do, of course, as landscape photographers. I must admit, in the past I've not been a big sort of bluebell shooter. I don't really go out of my way to shoot them, but when I was having a look around the gallery the other day, I realised that I don't really have a sort of sellable bluebell image, so I'm trying to rectify that tonight. I've come to Fishgarths Wood, which is a tricky place to shoot. I mean, I've only been here once before, about 3 years ago, and I remember it being visually very appealing but also quite messy, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge tonight. I'm going to get started, have a little look around here. Got plenty of time. I'm a good 3-4 hours before sunset, although I'm thinking the best of the light's probably going to be around an hour and a half before sunset itself, when the sun will dip behind the Langdale pikes and I'll lose the light. So bit of a guessing game, but let's see what we come up with. So I'll just talk you through what I'm looking at here. I was saying earlier about it being untidy in here. There's a lot of fallen branches, and normally they would make quite good foreground, but in this case I think they just look a bit untidy. So yeah, it's quite tricky at the moment. The cloud really isn't shifting so far. Hopefully that'll change, but it's making it hard to visualize a shot, because in most woodland scenes you want to create a sense of depth. Either, well, most photographers want to do that with mist. Now obviously we haven't got that today, so I want to do it with light. Now the light will probably pop out and it'll make life 10 times easier, but at the moment I'm just finding it a little tricky to visualize the shot. Looking at these bluebells, I was thinking on about this weird weather that we've had, and you know, it's been very cold. I don't know if these bluebells are either not quite at their best or they've gone over the best. Now, I always thought that once they start drooping, that's them on the way out, and a few of them do look like they're drooping a bit, so maybe we've missed the peak of it, I don't know. But yeah, fingers crossed this light gets out. Yeah, tough one at the minute. Right, I think I've found something. I'll tell you what, I am out of practice with my woodland photography. It feels like quite a long time since I've done any, and in here it's a little bit chaotic and there's a lot going on, so I'm just having a bit of a tricky time sort of visualising things. But the light did pop out very briefly there, and it was like switching a light bulb on, so all of a sudden you can see the scene a lot more easily. So the one that I've got framed up, I'm just waiting for this light to come back out again. But what I was saying earlier, it's quite a busy sort of scene, I would say this, but I'm shooting it in portrait format just to eliminate some of the sort of cluttered elements around it. We've got this fallen branch in the foreground, which is helping to sort of anchor the bottom of the frame, and then when the light did pop out, we have some nice sort of crisscrosses of light there across the bluebells. It's not your typical sort of bluebell scene where you've just got this, you know, big swathe of bluebells everywhere. There's just little patches of it here and there, just to sort of break up the scene a little bit. I don't want it to be just purely a bluebell scene. I want this more to be more of a traditional woodland scene with a few bluebells thrown in. But I'm at 135mm, so I'm quite sort of close in here. Again, like I was saying, just trying to exclude some of those elements. And yeah, just going to hope for this light to pop out again. Don't know. don't know with that one. It's one of those that all the elements are there when I'm looking at it on the back of the camera, but there's just something about it that I can't quite put my finger on that's making me unsure. It's one of those that I'll get it back on the PC and I might love it, but I don't know with that one. We'll just have to see. I'd like to get another shot before I leave tonight. The light is actually getting worse, of course it is, but it might get out for a brief moment, and that's all we need really in a woodland. So I'm going to work hard to try and get another shot here. There was one as I was walking into the woods using the path, but I didn't shoot it because really it felt a bit obvious. But having spent a good amount of time in here this afternoon, good compositions are quite hard to come by. It's one of these places that visually looks really, really appealing to your eye, but it's a real bugger to try and get something that really balances and works. So yeah, I'm gonna go and have another look at that path, I think. Bloody typical. You walk round and round in circles and the shot is there right in front of you, the first thing you came to. So I'm looking at this scene here with the fallen branch, and I think this is going to work. So I'm going to get set up. I don't know about this one. I was saying there about it being obvious, but now that I've got it framed up, I'm not so sure. It really needs some light to sort of transform it, and it's again quite hard to visualise when the light's flat. But what this will be is a good test of this 85mm Viltrox lens that Viltrox very kindly sent me. I'm not under pressure to do any kind of review of sorts or anything like that, but if you do want to know a little bit more about this lens, then leave me a comment and I might do a review in the future on it. But the shot that I'm looking at, this fallen branch, I really like. It anchors the bottom of the frame again, a bit like the other one, really well. The problem I'm having is there's an awful lot of overlap in the trees in the far distance. This is a busy woodland. It's very hard to get any kind of separation with a lot of this stuff. So you've got to make a bit of a compromise. And what I'm trying to do is separate the main branches in the front part of the image, and then hopefully the ones at the back are less of a distraction. It is quite a busy scene, but then it's a busy woodland, so you know it's a bit of a tricky one to shoot. Right, we're on. We have some light. I'm going to grab this quickly because I don't want to miss it. I think the light's going to be pretty fleeting here because there's a lot of clouds still up there. So yeah, 85mm. I'm probably going to shoot this 16:9 and lose a bit at the top and bottom, maybe even more of a severe crop than that. Try and focus your eye on that fallen tree in the foreground. Yeah, hopefully this one will work. Okay, tough shoot that one. You can come to a place like this and with it being wonderfully beautiful, you can easily fall into the trap of thinking you're just going to turn up and go bang, bang, bang and get a load of great shots. But for me, that place is a tricky one to shoot. It's just the way the lie of the land is and the way the light falls in there that I'll kill myself. Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one. I did say about that obvious shot on the path. I stopped there on the way back. I'll just put that on the screen for you now. Visually, it might be the most appealing shot to a casual viewer, but really for me, I'm shooting for myself and I'm not that interested if I don't find it appealing. So yeah, I'll put it on the screen and you might think it's the best one, but anyway, what I think we'll do is we'll head back to the PC because I've not really done any post-processing on these videos for a while, and I thought it might be interesting for you to see how I go about handling these files. So yeah, head back to the PC and I'll see you in a bit. Now, come on, admit it. You loved that bit of drone footage there, didn't you? I kid, of course. I was just taking the mick a little bit there. I was actually, when I was driving home there over Hardknott and Rhinos Pass, there was a lovely sunset going on, and I thought this will be a good chance to do a little bit of a test of the tracking with the drone. And you could see there from the footage that it passed with flying colours. When I was looking at the footage in post, I actually thought, sod it, I'll put it in for a little bit of light entertainment. And the music choice as well is me just sort of gently poking fun at some of the influences that you see here on YouTube. But anyway, that's probably a whole different vlog in itself. Onto these images. I didn't want this to turn into a sort of prolonged post-processing session. I just want to give you a sort of brief rundown of what I've done with these images and also some of the issues that I encountered with them. This first one, I think, works pretty well. It was my favourite one that I shot this session. You can see from the side-by-side that not really an awful lot is needed to be done with it. There was a slight white balance adjustment and a little bit of contrast and saturation added into certainly the greens and blues. But really, the main thing I wanted to do was do a bit of dodging and burning on the areas where the light is hitting the floor of the woodland there, and also the brighter parts of the leaves on the trees. In terms of issues faced with this shot, the first one is that stump in the middle right. I thought that would be actually more of a distraction than it was. When I'm looking at this as the final shot, it's not really catching my eye too much, so I was happy to sort of leave that in. I don't really do a lot of cloning, but that would have been one thing in this image that I might have considered cloning out. The second thing, which is more important for me, is that while the main tree in the middle there is the subject in this shot, I don't think it stands out enough. Now, that's a combination of several things, but mainly it's just the way the light's falling on it. I could have done with some light actually striking the tree a bit more there, whereas it's actually hitting the trees in the background, so it's kind of pulling your eye away into the distance, which isn't really what you want. Now, in a perfect world, we'd have some mist here and that would create the separation for us, but you've got to work with what you've got on the day. But all in all, I think the composition works pretty well, and it might be one that I return to on another day in better conditions. But it's a nice, jolly image of the bluebells. Okay, so on to this second image, and I've had a bit of a howler here, to be quite honest with you. We all have them, and I've really not got the shot here at all. I'll just talk you briefly through the processing. It's very similar to the first one. There's been a slight cooling of the white balance, bit of localized dodging and burning on the foreground and the fallen tree, and a little bit of saturation added to the greens where that lovely light's hitting the back end of the image as well, and also a bit of a vignette added to just draw your eye to that fallen tree in the foreground. But obviously, when the composition is wrong, it doesn't matter how good the light is, it won't save an image, and it certainly hasn't saved this one. The main reason it doesn't work is the focal length choice. Now, I was, in my defense, a little restricted here because I'm in a bluebell wood and I'm doing my best to stick to the paths. So really, I could only shoot with a sort of mid to long telephoto length lens here. Really, in a perfect world, I'd have got a lot closer to that fallen tree in the foreground and shot it with a wider lens and created a bit of a gap between foreground and background. But as it is here, there's nothing really connecting that fallen tree with the back end of the image. It's very static and it's very two-dimensional. So really, there's no sense of depth created here. Your eye just sort of stops at the foreground and it doesn't move through the image in a nice sort of smooth manner. I mean, we've got some lovely light going on here in the back end of the image. I did mention while I was shooting this that I had a lot of issues with overlapping tree trunks. There's not an awful lot you can do about that in this woodland. It's a very messy sort of arrangement in there, and you've just got to work with it as best you can. In a perfect world, again, if we had some mist and it was shot in the morning, we might be able to get that separation, but as it is here, you've just got to work with what you've got again. But really, the focal length choice is the problem here, and for that alone, this did not work and was a total failure. But you've got to learn from these things, and yeah, it's not the end of the world. So I just briefly want to show you this last image. This was actually taken with the drone. The reason for this is that the shot that I showed you earlier in the video that was taken on the Z7 off the tripod from a slightly lower vantage point, I didn't feel that that shot did a very good job of integrating that path in the middle very well. Now, putting the drone up, even 15-20 feet as it is here in the air, it's doing a much better job of making that path in the middle of the shot more of a feature in the scene. And also coupled with the fact that it's managed to handle this really tough high dynamic range scene very well. I mean, this scene here is as tough as it's going to get for a small centered camera, but it's handled this absolutely beautifully, really. I mean, I shot this as a 5-shot bracket just to cover myself, but in reality, I only needed a single frame to get this result. So going forward, this is really going to be a good option for me, and it's going to open up a whole world of new possibilities to get shots like this. So I'm thinking less of the sort of really high in the sky stuff and more just in tricky situations like this where you might be in a woodland and even an elevation of maybe 10 or 15 feet will make all the difference. It's nice to have this as an option. So yeah, I was really pleased with the result in this. I mean, the composition itself, I'm not that struck on. I did mention on the video that it's a very sort of obvious shot. And sometimes the most obvious shot is the best shot, and in this case it probably is, but I really enjoy the challenge aspect of trying to find a shot. So while this is very nice to look at, it's pretty low on the sort of skill level really for me. So I've took it anyway, and hopefully you like this shot, and it's, if nothing else, it's a really good test of the drone. But hopefully you've enjoyed this video and I haven't waffled on too much here, and you've enjoyed listening to some of my insights on how I've shot these images. Keep liking and subscribing, and I'll catch you on the next one.